Last night, I watched these two videos because I believe the two parties, Kathy Woods and we're going to call him just Kamath, are part of the cause of the problems. And I also recognize they'd probably have two very different opinions as to how to solve the problem. And I was right. But I think it's valuable in that we learn their opinions of what is the problem, how we got here, and how we're going to get out of the problem. So I think there's a lot to be learned. So here again are the two videos. I'm going to strongly suggest that you go watch them. You're going to spend probably an hour and a half because they are long, and they're very different presentations. Kamath is basically a professionally produced video. Kathy sits in a white corner and explains to you what she thinks happened and what's going to happen. So you make your opinion, and right after this, I'll give you my opinion.
Best of Us Investors presents Carrie Griegmeyer.
I took the time this morning to watch both of these videos again, and I think I want to share that I recognize that I am part of the problem because I promoted stocks, new companies that I thought would change the world, and I think both Kathy and Kamath have done the same thing. In fact, I at one point called Kamath a carnival barker because of his overzealous selling of SPACs, making profit for himself. So I find it a little bit offsetting that what he is now saying. He doesn't use the word SPAC once in the 15-20 minute presentation. And I think he was a part of the problem. I think Kathy was a part of the problem, that she and I were both ahead of our times. I think she is on to what is going to change the world, but we got into it a little bit too early and probably added fuel to the fire. So what I did was go through and watch the videos again, and I made notes, and I created a script, if you will, for this video, and I put Kamath's responses in black and Kathy's rebuttals or opinions in red, and I found that they have a very different opinion as to what caused the problem and how to solve the problem. And so I kind of want to go through them and give you my take at the end. Kamath starts by making a very strong point that I agree with, that the money supply of the world increased by $35 trillion between 2008 and 2020. And he is of the very strong position that $35 trillion has to be taken out of the market. At one point, he actually says that for every dollar that went in, 92 cents of it went into the stock market and thus inflated prices. Kathy then comes back and says the problem we're having right now is that the money supply has stopped growing. She makes the point that in 2021, it grew by 20%. That is, the money supply increased by 20%. And this year, it's only grown by 2%. And she then reflects that in next year, it's predicted to go negative. She sees this as a problem. In other words, Kamath is saying we've got to take the fuel out of the fire, and Kathy is saying we need to add more fuel to the fire or this market can't go on, and that the government's actions are actually holding back the market, where Kamath is saying they created the problem, they need to fix it. Kamath is of the opinion that we are halfway through the solution of that Jay Powell's increasing interest rates and curbing inflation has been going on for roughly 18 months, and we need 18 months more of the same and more stringent holdback as possible. Whereas Kathy says, no, Powell has to stop now. That this cutting back on the balance sheet, that this government stopping the support of the stock market by throwing more money at it and in fact taking money out of it has to stop. Kamath and I agree that's wrong. Kathy even goes into a dissertation of making a comparison to the 1920s, and that we had a pandemic back then as we have a pandemic now, that we had a war, World War I back then, and we have Vladimir invading Ukraine now, and that the government did, in fact, cut back on spending, cut back on money supply, and that went into a depression. She is basically saying that what the government is potentially doing now could take the economy into a depression, and they need to reverse that. They need to bring interest rates down. In fact, she talked about a interview she had with Jeremy Siegel, and Jeremy Siegel believes that the government will wake up, and by this time next year, interest rates will be down to 2% or below, and that money pumping into the economy will bring it back. Kamath and I say that's dangerous ground. Kamath makes the point that the government is acting on bad data. He goes into a disclosure that I had no idea, that they don't even have, in this time of cloud computing, actual numbers. They just go out and take surveys and then derive from those surveys what they think is going to happen in the economy. That shocked me, quite honestly, that our government, and I also recognize that every time they come out with a number, within 30 days, they revise that number, which basically says what Kamath is saying, they're working from bad data, so you really can't pay much attention to it. And then Kathy comes back and says they're doing the wrong thing and it needs to stop now. Then another issue that they totally disagree on is the position of energy in this current market and the future of the market. Kathy, of course, falls back to her EV, electric vehicles, particularly Tesla, is going to basically take away the need for oil. And Kamath comes back and says we've got a real problem in that Russia is being sanctioned on their oil. He also recognizes that many of the sanctions that we put on them were meaningless, and that he is also saying that as China comes off of the zero COVID policy, their demand for oil and natural gas is going to increase, which will in fact put the price up. And as a result, that oil and gas is a good pivot point and a good place to be investing right now as we work through what he is saying the next 18 months of decreased equity prices in the stock market. So he's saying a good place to put your money now is that of oil and natural gas, which is being inflated in price as a result of the conflict with Russia and the problems that Europe is having. Kamash also believes that private equity are funding through loans and funny money, if we can call it that, nonprofit corporations. And these are those corporations who are investing very heavily in genome sequencing, genome editing, robotics, artificial intelligence, and blockchain. He's basically saying these are nonprofit companies, and he's probably reflecting on some of the cryptocurrency fraud cases that are burning money, and this is causing part of the devaluation of assets that we're experiencing right now. Kathy, on the other hand, believes that this disruptive innovation, which she puts a value of $7 trillion on, will actually grow to $210 trillion over the next 8 to 10 years. And this is where the smart investors should go. Kamath believes these companies will file bankruptcy and disappear and possibly be absorbed by larger companies. So they're at total disagreement on this. I happen to be in Kathy's camp here, but I've explained that to you before. Again, Kamath reiterates the fact that for every dollar that the government printed since 2008 through 2023 or 2022, that 92% of it ended up in inflated prices in the stock market, and that has to come out. So he is predicting a decrease in the stock market asset value of $3 to $5 trillion before we can move in a positive direction. Kathy then again says her emphasis is let the government continue to fund the markets and put the attention and your investment attentions multi-omics, which is genomics and genome editing through robotics, artificial intelligence, and blockchain. That's the sum total of what I got from those two videos. If you'd like a copy of this script that I'm using from my takeaways from these two videos, I'll put a link where I can get your email address and send you a copy of it. So, what's my take after I watch these two videos? And I'd really encourage you to do this. Here again are the two videos I'm talking about. There's some good information here. There's some differing opinions. You have your own opinion of these two people and me, the third person. But I believe that the government made some terrible mistakes by overfunding the stock market, by overfunding the economies. I have a number that in the U.S., our money supply has increased by 40% just in 2020. That's not safe. I don't believe. So I believe that's going to come out of the market. I believe that the earnings that big tech and retail and the overspending and the increased debt by consumers, I just think it is so wrong that we beat the table, that the government has to stop spending money, and then we celebrate that the consumer hit their credit cards extremely hard on Black Friday and Cyber Monday. And it's not right that people are continuing to borrow money, leverage up to buy assets, whether they be toys from the toy store or the price of Amazon stock. It's not right. This has to be curtailed. So I believe that we have probably another 6 bad months. I think we have to get through fourth quarter earnings, which I think are going to be very disappointing on big tech and probably on retail, because all those sales are going up. They're at decreased prices. So I think we have a tough 6 months. I've set some prices. I want to get back into big tech. I want to own more Amazon, Google, Apple, Microsoft, even Facebook and Apple, because I believe they own the data that is going to be the keys to what Kathy says are the 5 areas: genomics, robotics, artificial intelligence, and blockchain. And yes, I do believe that even from this cryptocurrency fiasco that we're going through, we're going to learn a lot. And blockchain is going to be important. I'm not so sure where cryptocurrency is going to fit into that, but blockchain is going to be important. So I'm in Kathy's camp, but I'm not sure I agree with her as to how to get there and how long it will take to get there. But I do believe that once this genomics and genome editing comes through, once the science happens and they can prove that they can put a needle in my arm and take the cancer out of my body, that they can take the cancer out of my granddaughter's egg and her fiance's sperm, that you won't stop that. You won't stop that, and you will not stop artificial intelligence and machine learning. You can't stop it, even with inflation and high interest rates. We got to get through those. I believe that Kathy's on the right track. I just don't agree with her path to get there. Okay, that's my take on it. Again, if you want a copy of my notes, and then you watch the videos and you let me know what you agree and disagree with, go into the description and I'll give you a link that I can email you a copy of this presentation I made. All right, I'll talk to you again, hopefully tomorrow.